Welcome back to the United Students Podcast. We're pumped to be back with you. This week we got Pastor Parker on with us. So, don't say any words. Just
I'm about to say, I've never been on a pod before you.
There's not a microphone. He's just going to mime to you guys today. He's going to, I don't know what that was. That was the poorest sign language I've ever seen in my life. It's fine. We'll fix it in post. No, we won't. Pumped to be back with you guys. Round 2, episode 2. We're coming at you live. With episode, I should talk like a baseball announcer for the entire thing.
You can tell we're still figuring this out,
yeah.
You know?
Look, hey, it's going to change up every
It's like
week,
everything
right?
inside of me wishes this was just audio. So I
Yeah.
was like, the entire time, I'm just like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
What do I do with my hands?
I was like, Court in production,
You know what I
I should leave them at my side, but
Listen,
I was like,
I mean, and we both preach, and so, you know what I mean? Like, on
still
stage.
figuring it out, you know?
Sitting down is a whole different game, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a lot more comfortable,
But if I stood up, I would never be in the camera, so it doesn't matter. So that's really the point of what I'm getting at, is that if I stood up, you wouldn't see me ever. So, you know, the audiobook of this podcast is coming next week.
That's right.
That's a lie. But no, so we just got done with our past month, and we've had a great time. Hopefully you guys have been able to make it out to some midweeks, been able to hang out with us.
That's some great weather this past month.
Yeah, up until this past week. It's been great.
And then Easter was like, you know what?
Yeah, if you were here for Easter, you know, you got lucky. And now it's post-Easter. So there we go. We spoiled it of when we're recording this, right? We recorded this just past Easter, all right? And so, you know, the mystique, the mystery of man, when did they record this? That's up. You know what I mean? That's over. But to be fair, I'm also wearing the new merch. You know what I mean? So that's kind of a dead giveaway also.
Hey,
you know
look,
what I mean?
PK wore it early, though. So.
PK did wear it early, but that's because he's PK and he's allowed to do that. You know what I mean? Look, when you're the man in charge, you know, you can pull some strings and make some things happen. How many of y'all were there on Sunday when PK wore it like the week before? He wore it the week before the merch release, and everybody in the lobby afterwards was like, "Where'd that sweater?"
It was to the point where we had to put a social media post out.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, hey, is this new? Is this like unique to him? Or I was like, is this access to everybody?
I was like, did he make this? Did he press this on a
Entire
vinyl
staff's like,
press?
quick, we gotta order more, order more.
PK had to make all of them in his garage so that we could.
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah,
Respect
gotta start the side
Respect
hustle somewhere. But everybody's like, where did these come from? So now we have them, right? So if get them before they're gone, right? And the only way to get them before they're gone is to join us on Sunday, right? And so join us on Sunday morning. See that cheap plug for
Sunday, like it was planned.
For Sunday morning, almost like it was planned. It wasn't. But
Trust me, it wasn't.
Trust me, it wasn't. If you think that we plan stuff that well, keep on thinking that, all right? Because I'm just lucky that I'm here. You know what I mean? So, and Pastor Parker would agree with that. All right.
Wait,
so
I'm just enjoying it.
Yeah, just
enjoying
enjoying
every
it.
second.
But yeah, so but look, we hope that you were able to make it out to a midweek recently. If not, join us on April 10th. All right, April 10th is going to be our next
We're back.
Midweek. We're going to be back. We're back. If not, you know, we'd love to have you. And if this comes out after April 10th, we hope you're there. And that's really the big thing that I'm getting at, because I don't know how to mix, edit, master, fix any of this in post. And so if you ever see any of these, it's a miracle because I'm not doing them. All right.
Big shout out to Dylan Harden.
Yeah, that's right. Huge shout out to Dylan.
You would have catch him on the first podcast.
Because without Dylan, we'll never make it this far without Dylan, really. All right. And so if you see Dylan, if you know Dylan, shout out Dylan, because he's the reason that this is even happening. But no, this past month we dove in a little bit and we talked at midweek. If you were joining us, if you were here, we talked a lot about just like really this idea of coming out of the cave, right? And so you know, we look in the Bible at Elijah, and Elijah found himself in a place where he was depressed, he was lonely, he was tired, he was beat, he was ready, but at the end of the day, he was ready to be done with everything. He was, you know, praying that he would die. He was just like, God, I'm done. I'm over it. And he found himself in this cave, but a lot of times we find ourselves in these caves. We find ourselves in these places where we're depressed, we're lonely, we're tired, we feel like we're over it, we're done with it, we can't go on any further. And so we just kind of talked about this idea of, man, what do you do when you find yourself like in the cave of life? Like, what do you find yourself when you are overcome with all these mental health issues? And to be honest with you, maybe you give me your opinion on this, all right? So I hate, well, let me not put it that way.
Hate's a strong word.
Hate to strong. Yeah.
That's what my mom told me.
That's what the Bible says, right? So that's what your mom told you. Yeah. I don't know if the Bible says that, but you know, it probably does somewhere.
That's right.
It talks about hating things, but your mom told you that. That's what my mom told me growing up, and but no. So I'll say it like this: I think that saying mental health issues has become like this buzzword that we use everywhere all the time to everybody with everything, right? You know what I mean? We could all probably agree that, you know, everybody's like, my mental health. And it's like, yeah, dude, that's all of us. You know what I mean? Like, all of us got some mental health. You know what I mean? Some of us got some mental unhealth. You know what I mean? But it's like, so I hate using that in that kind of term. But we've all found ourselves where we find places where mental health has affected us in one way or another. And so this past month, we talked a lot about that. You know, I talked a little bit about it. If you were here, if you missed it, then you missed out. You know what I mean? But we got to hear from Pastor Parker talking to us this month a little bit about it. And so, you know, for a little bit, I want to be able to talk a little bit about, you know, because we talked about a lot, but there's a lot we didn't talk about. You know what I mean?
You can't do it in like 3 weeks, like unpack everything.
Yeah.
But.
It's like we're going to handle everything there is to handle about mental health in the next 20 minutes for the next 3 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, that's a really hard thing to do. But there's a lot we did get to talk about, you know, talking about the idea of like Elijah found himself in a place where he had let everything about his personal state allowed him to forget about everything of who God was. So, you know, he was hungry, he was angry, he was lonely, he was tired, he was all these different things, but because of that, he lost all this perspective of who God is and what God could do in his life. And Pastor Parker talked a little bit about how, you know, on the backside of that decision, how he was able to get back in the game, you know, how what got Elijah out of the cave was connecting himself back to a purpose and getting himself in the game. And then this last week, I talked a little bit about social media, and we'll probably end up talking a little bit more about that here, you know what I mean? Because, you know, there's a lot of details that I feel like, you know, people get so caught up in, and then sometimes you ever get misquoted? You ever take what you said?
I don't think anything I've ever said has been quoted. So
you're like, you would get misquoted if you were never quoted in the first place.
If you never been quoted in the first place. But I mean, I just want to go back to what you said earlier. I mean, the fact that mental health, anxiety, depression, it's everything. We talk about it all the time, but it's almost like one of those things when you hear it, you're like, oh, here we go again. Or when you hear it, you're like, oh no, yeah, give me more. But all that to be said, like, I mean, I'm just glad we're a part of a church that will talk about it, but in the right light.
And that's things like, and that's part of what I want to do here is like talk about it, you know, because if we don't talk about it, somebody's going to talk about it. You know what I mean? So, and I'd much rather you hear from Pastor Parker and I, and even get some other voices in your life of leaders and people, rather than just like everybody who you sit next to at school who's like, I'm an expert.
Well, that's the point. It's like everybody talks about it, but it's like finding the right people in the right place. And what I'm not saying like what better place in the church, but I was like, the fact that this isn't our words, this isn't our wisdom, this isn't our thoughts. But I was like, you see it all throughout Scripture that like we're equipped with the Word of God to see people who've been through it and see the right way to go through it. Instead of just being like, oh yeah, like I'm depressed, I'm anxious. It's like, yeah, everybody is. It's like, what's the right place? What's the right space? And what's the right people to talk to, listen to, and to go from? Because I was like, I mean, the world talks about it all the time, and it's like anxiety and depression. I promise I'm trying to like get to a culmination like with all of this, but like for example, we go to like ADD and things like that. It's like everybody's like, oh well, I'm hyperactive, so I'm ADD, so it's so hard to like diagnose it or almost like state it. And same thing with like anxiety and depression. It's hard to diagnose it. It's hard to say because I mean sometimes
it's a buzzword.
And it's a buzzword. Like you have a bad day, you're like, well, I'm depressed. It's like, but are you really? And it's like, you may be, you may not, but if you don't go to the right space and the right person, you may never know if it's the right word to use, it's the right diagnosis to address, and the right. This is making sense. Like the right place, the right space, the right people. I was like, and talk about it in all the right ways.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to do. I mean, the next probably like 5, 10, 15 minutes just to unpack just a little bit more of what this looks like and how to find steps towards healing in the right way.
Yeah. And I like that you said it's like, but it is a buzzword. Everybody's like, everybody's depressed all the time. And that's probably, and we over exaggerate things, which also doesn't help. You know what I mean? Because then we're like, we have like one bad day, like Chick-fil-A gets our order wrong. And they're like, they put pickles on my sandwich.
There's just a rain cloud over my entire life.
Everything sucks. You know what I mean? Like, but it's like, while you may have, like it is possible to have weeks where things didn't go your way. You know what I mean? You will have days and spaces and even like times where things do suck. I know there's times where I've had, I wouldn't say I'm a person who struggles with depression, but I would definitely say I'm a person who's gone through seasons where I've battled depression. And I'm sure you would probably say the same thing. I mean, you talked from stage about like having an anxiety attack, but would you consider yourself an anxious person?
I mean, I wouldn't consider myself. I worry like everybody. I was like, I'm a naturally person. I was like, I view the glass half full, but 99% of the time I view it half empty. Like
So you're not naturally an optimist.
Well, that's why I oversee the finances in my family, because like I anticipate the car breaking down. I anticipate like all this stuff. Like I would say I worry about stuff, but I was like the difference between worrying and being overly anxious are like completely different. So it's like you said, I go through seasons, I go through fits, but I wouldn't consider myself an anxious person. But I have been there. I have walked through it.
Yeah.
I was like, so yeah, I'm not an anxious person, but I go through spells and seasons like everybody.
Yeah, and I would say like there's times where you're gonna have things like that, but I think the problem is we label ourselves so many times. Like we put these own labels on ourselves, where it's like we feel anxiety, and so we're like, well, I'm an anxious person, and it's like, no, you're feeling anxiety right now. Yeah, you're experiencing anxiety.
You don't have to be an anxious person,
because then we almost like back ourselves into like this corner, like this wall of like, oh well, this is what I deal with, this is what I struggle with, and it's like, yeah, but it's also something that everybody struggles with, and that doesn't minimize what you're going through, but it does put in perspective like what you're going through, and like I know in the past month we talked about Elijah. We really focused on Elijah and what he dealt with, but we look at all types of people in the Bible, and it's like, hey, you're not the only one who's gone through it. Because a lot of times that's the other thing, is like we start to feel like, oh man, I'm the only one who deals with this. Like, man, I'm just alone in this thing. I'm just always gonna be depressed. I'm always gonna feel this way. And it's like I think of like David. You look back in the Bible, and David had Absalom, which was like one of his sons, and he was distraught. Like he would cry over Absalom because Absalom hated him. You know what I mean? And then later on, Absalom gets killed in battle, and David's like weeping over his son's death, and one of his men comes into him and says like, "Why are you crying?" Like I was like, here's the thing. I don't know if like somebody who's like close to me, who like even if it like. There was some relationship issues, you know what I mean, between David and Absalom, you know what I mean? Like there was some spitefulness between them, but like at the end of the day, David was like depressed about what happened, and he's like, why are you depressed about people who I don't remember exactly. Do you remember exactly how I worded it?
But I know exactly what you're talking about. But.
Something along the lines of like, man, why are you crying about someone who didn't care about you in the first place? And you're like, dang. Like you're like, oh, geez. You know what I mean? Go read it. That's not how it's worded. At least not in my translation. But it's something like that. Like he's like, why are you crying over like somebody who didn't care, somebody who wasn't there for you, somebody who is an enemy to you? But we see like David isn't looked at. People don't look at David and they're like, the big crybaby David. You know what I mean? Like he's looked at as like the man after God's own heart. But he had times where he struggled with anxiety and things that he dealt with.
You can go through literally the entire book of Psalms. Yeah. I was like, you can tell the emotion he's feeling. That like in this chapter, he's overcome, he's overwhelmed. I was like, he can't see anything beyond it. He's just him and his feelings. But then you'll go to another chapter where he's like, man, God, you're just so good. Like I'm on the highest mountain. Like I feel great. I feel amazing. But yeah, like you said, like David. Wave of emotions.
Yeah, he had a little bit of bipolar in him. You know what I mean? He's
I don't know if we can diagnose him like that, but
I will. I'll do it. I'll do it. The unofficial diagnosis.
That's right. Quote him.
Yeah. Don't take anything I say for gospel unless I say so. Don't take that one though.
Unless you're quoting the gospel.
Yeah. That's quoted. It says David of great bipolarness. That's what it said. It said it somewhere in there. I promise.
Anyway,
that's a lie. But no, like you look at David, like he wasn't defined as somebody who was like anxious or depressed. But like you said, you look through the Psalms, you're like, man, he was going through it. Every other week he was going through it. And I think like all of us have those times and moments where we're going through it. But that's why we say like it's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way. I think, but on the other side of that, there are a lot of people who do genuinely struggle with anxiety and depression, and like you live life without ever not having an anxious thought. You know what I mean? Like there's never a time where you don't have an anxious thought.
They just label themselves as like, I'm anxious, like I'm depressed, but I'm not like going back to, hey, like what I said.
We almost lost the microphone here. We lost it.
But not to like go back to like what I said a few weeks ago, but it's like the whole idea of, all right, like when you have a car, when you have something wrong with it, I was like, you have that little check engine light, but a lot of people think like the big issue is that I'm anxious, when anxiety is just an indicator of, hey, that maybe there's something that's wrong. And it's like, all right, now that you know that, like, what are you doing it? And it's like, because a lot of people, it's like they'll see that they're anxious and they'll just sit in it, and the enemy will want nothing more. I was like, same thing with like Elijah. It's like, hey, when he was, Jezebel could have easily gone and killed him, but she chose to send him like a note, a letter, just to let him know.
She just liked watching him suffer. You know
that's the thing. Like she wanted to see, and the enemy wants nothing more to have you sit in it and suffer and take yourself out, because in Elijah's case, it would discredit him and it would discredit God. I was like, where if she took him out, he would be a martyr. I was like, but again, the enemy doesn't want to take you out and make you a martyr. He wants to have you sit in it, take yourself out, because then it discredits you and it discredits your God. God.
Yeah.
But all the thing to go back to like the check engine light, it's like, hey, like anxiety is an indicator. I was like, and now what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
I was like, you have two options. Three, you can sit in it, which the enemy will want nothing more, or like we talked about over the past couple of weeks, like you can take it to God and you can take it to God's people. Because I mean, you take it to God's people. I was like, Scripture reigns true. I know James writes in chapter 5. It's like, all right, well, confess your sins to one another so you may be healed. But it's more, it applied to everything. Like, hey, take your struggles, take your worries, take your anxiety, take your depression, take those to people so that you may be healed. I mean, you look at the analogy of a gym. The reason that you get a spotter when you're benching something is so you can lift more weight than you can actually carry.
Yeah.
And the same thing is like, hey, your anxiety may be too overwhelming for you right now, but imagine if you got that spotter to carry it with you. Or again, you can just sit in it and let that bar hit your chest and never get back up.
Yep.
But also taking it to God, because then maybe God is trying to identify or trying to, again, the indicator thing of like, hey, like what's the imbalance? Because one, it may be a life imbalance. Like the reason you're experiencing anxiety and depression may be because
you
your
got
life is
travel ball, you got homework,
Exactly. Like-
you're going to
like,
the gym.
you stayed up at 2 a.m., you woke up way too early, you've pounded way too much coffee. I was like, and now you're experiencing heart palpitations because you just drank a Celsius after all of that.
Listen, stop having 7 Celsius a day, all right? It's not that good. It's not that good, I promise.
But the thing is, like hey, if it's the indicator, I was like, you have the opportunity, one, to take it to God's people, so it's not too heavy for you to carry, but also take it to God and say, hey, like, God, what are you trying to reveal to me through this? Because it may be a life imbalance. Like, hey, you're staying up too late, you're pounding too much Celsius, you're overworking yourself with way too much schoolwork, travel ball, and then also playing school sports. I was like, or it may be a chemical imbalance where it's like, hey, like honestly, there may be some like things and chemicals in your brain that may be off that are causing like a legitimate diagnosed depression or anxiety. But again,
some of us lacking in that dopamine department. You know what I mean? It's all and it's fun, and that's all right. It's like, but a lot of people, you know, and I think that's the other side of it is like some sides of it is like it's taboo. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we can't talk about that, and it's like, sure we can. You know what I mean? It's like some of us struggle to be happier, you know what I mean, or find like that joy or put on a smile or whatever, because some of us just have the chemical imbalance. And it's like, but that's where I also talk about like you can also there, you know what I mean, like sometimes we see like doctors as like a dirty word, you know what I mean, you're like somebody's like, well, you should get on medication, and they're like, no, I can't do that, God wouldn't want me to be medicated.
I should pray more and read more.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, you could, like, you can pray more. I'm not going to tell you not to pray more. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely, can God heal you of it? For sure. He absolutely can do it. But sometimes God wants to use the natural way because he gave doctors a brain and scientists a brain and pharmacists a brain.
The only God-given gift, or it's not... Pastoring is not the only God-given gift. I was like, your teacher has a God-given gift. Your the person that changes your tires, I don't know why I thought of that, but like the mechanic has a God-given gift, and the doctor has a God-given gift.
Hey, the pharmacist, the people in medicine, like God gave them a brain for a reason. You know what I mean? And if it's to help part of our human condition, you know what I mean? Like, go for it. Not that we're like so dependent on this thing or that thing, but if all you need is a little bit of something to give you a serotonin boost or to lower your anxiety or reduce your anxiety so that you can like think freely or take a deep breath in and out for maybe the first time in years, you know what I mean? It's like, why wouldn't you? Because you know what I mean? Like at that point you're not taking help that's readily available. You know what I mean? But I think sometimes we see it as like this thing of like, oh, we can't do that. You know what I mean? Like God wouldn't want me to do that. You know, it's like I don't know. That's not my understanding of how God wants us to live. Like he gave people a brain for a reason. You know what I mean?
And things like the doctor is not effective though if you don't go and talk about it. And it's like, and that's the key with all of it. I know we say like, hey, like it's a buzzword.
But you gotta talk about it.
Like, but you have to talk about it, and you have to do it in the right places and spaces and with the right people. But I was like, because if you don't talk about it, the doctor can't diagnose it if it's a chemical imbalance, or if you don't talk about it with your friends or trusted people, like they can't like point out the thing that, hey, maybe it's a life imbalance, or they can't talk about like, if you don't talk about it, I was like, you will never find healing. You will always just sit in it. Because the thing was, Elijah, if you go back to that story of like, he talked about it probably in all the wrong ways of like, I mean, he was lying to himself. He's like, I'm the only one left. When it's like, if you read further, you see that there was thousands of prophets that were still left, or like she's gonna kill me. Like I better be off dead. Like he talked about it probably in all the wrong ways.
She never killed him.
But I was like,
she didn't do it. She wasn't about it.
But like if he never talked about it, God would have never had the opportunity to like reinstate him, to take him back, because he told him, hey, go back the way that you came, to go back to re-up, to go back to the place of oath. But if he would have just sat and sit in it, been quiet, and then kept that pit, like he would have, who knows where the story would have went.
Yeah.
But the key point, like if you miss everything, like talk about it with a trusted friend, with a licensed professional.
Yep.
I was like, he's probably not talking about it with your friend at lunch of like, hey, like I'm just struggling with anxious thoughts. I was like, if it's a trusted friend, they love Jesus, they love you, and they love Jesus more than they love you. Like, yeah, that's great, but talk about it.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the other thing that happens is like we allow things like, I mean, there's a whole thing about I saw this study about like Gen Z, which shout out Gen Z. That's, I mean, I feel like, do you know, okay, I feel like I'm like the elder Gen Z, you know what I mean? Like I'm the old Gen Z people, but all our Gen Z students, I'm not a millennial, all right? Stop calling me a millennial. And to all my millennials out there, I'm not a Gen Z. I don't know where I fit, all right? I feel like I'm like the young millennial, the old. I'm like in between both of them. I don't know where I fit. Yeah. So I'll just take the mantle of like I'm the elder millennial, or I'm not the elder millennial. I'm the elder Gen Z, right? You know what I mean? I'm the old Gen Z like big brother to everybody. But you know, most of if you're a student right now, unless you're a sixth grader, you probably fit in like that Gen Z category. If you're a sixth grader, shout out Gen Alpha. But like a lot of them,
Born in like 2010.
Yeah, no, past that. Listen, if you're a sixth grader, tell me what year you were born, because I don't know off the top of my head.
Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat.
Put it in the comments what year you were born if you're in sixth grade. Because I have no clue. Were you born in 2013? That might be right. 2013, right? Sixth grader? Are you 11 years old if you're a sixth grader? I don't know. But yeah, so like that's crazy to think about. But like a study said that I think it was 70% of Gen Z says that they feel lonely. 80% of Gen Z says they struggle with like anxiety, depression. And so it's like it becomes this big thing where everyone says they like, but again, it may not be something where it's like not 80% of Gen Z has a diagnosis of depressive disorder. You know what I mean? It's like, but we all experience it. You know what I mean? And I think that's the big thing is like everybody's putting down they've experienced it, but we've labeled ourselves that this is something we have. You know what I mean? But there's other things too. Like as you know, we start to look at like the overall image of like mental health. What all plays into your mental health? And there's like things like trauma. You know what I mean? Like trauma and stress. You know what I mean? Like different stressors. And I know that like you've talked about before how you've dealt with like, you know, trauma in your life, even though some people may not say it's trauma. You know what I mean? Like you get down to like the meat and potatoes of it. You know what I mean? It's like little T trauma that you've dealt with in your life. You know what I mean? And like there's so many students that are probably in that same boat. You know what I mean? And you know, so that plays a factor into like our mental health. I mean, we were just talking, or we were listening today to like a Dave Ramsey, the Financial Peace. But one of his guys, he said like he doesn't believe there's physical health, there's mental health, spiritual health, there's all these things. Like there's health, and everything plays into it. You know what I mean? And so it's like it's a part of being like your health of who you are. You know what I mean? Like, but mental health plays a part in that. Like, you know, going with the thing of loneliness, like the whole reason I started talking about social media was because I think social media has like lied to us. You know, we call it social media, but it's like you don't see anybody, like nobody's in person.
It was like the heart of it is like to connect people, but in reality, most of them are trying to be connected to a screen. And realize they're the loneliest thing
ever.
It's
like I'm on social media. It's like you're at home by yourself in your bedroom scrolling. You know what I mean? Like I don't like. There's nothing social about it. But you know, we call it social media all the time, and we're like this is social, and it's like, but there's no social interaction. There's social.
So you ain't seen my DMs though.
Yeah. What? What are you trying to? Your DMs?
My DMs are empty because I don't have. Instagram.
Good point. I was like, people just coming at you in your DMs all the time. Just everybody's got an opinion.
Misquoting me, you know?
Yeah, everybody's misquoting you in your DMs. That's what it is. You may not have social media, but if you did, everybody would be misquoting you in your DMs.
100%.
Yeah. Listen, sliding in people's DMs is out in 2024, right? Sorry. You know what I mean? That's out in 2024. I don't know what's in its place, but that's out. You know, nobody slides in anybody's DMs anymore.
Yeah.
So I hear. But like that plays into it. You know, pressure, like school pressure. We don't have a student on the couch with us today, but I'm sure that if we were to ask, like, man, do you feel a lot of pressure in school from like whether it's from your parents or from your teachers or from your coaches or from like a recruiter, from whoever, for your from behalf of your scholarship? Like, do you feel like you have a lot of pressure to perform well? I'm sure the answer would be yes. You know what I mean? Absolutely, I do. And there's things like self-image, like, you know what I mean? Like self-worth, your like body image, even like peer pressure, I think falls into that. Like how, like we get so afraid of what other people are going to think, like that we get, this last week I talked about the comparison trap, you know what I mean? We fall so far into that comparison trap that we'll just do whatever other people want us to do to be accepted. And it just like it takes, I think all of those things, like, you know, the big ones are like depression, anxiety, loneliness. Like those are the ones that get all of the airtime. They get all the talk, but it's like there's so many other things that play a role into it that we don't talk about a lot. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think those things a lot of times are what the real like killer are, and what like the real issue are, and like a lot of things that really compound onto the pile of everything that you feel, everything that you deal with, everything that you go through. Back, guys. Cut those cameras for a minute. But no, we were talking about like there's all these other things that compound on top of it. But it's like, you know, anxiety and depression is the overarching thing, and that's the thing we talk about all the time. But there's all these things, like I know, talked to and met so many people who have like an eating disorder that has affected the way that they think, like the health of their mind and how they view themselves and how they label themselves and how they think of themselves. And the same thing with just like different body image issues, like so much of that. I mean, I know like, you know, when I was younger, I don't know, growing up, I would never call it like bullying. Like I would never tell people like I was bullied in school, like, cause that just wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like when you thought of like a bully growing up, you thought of like a Disney Channel character. You know what I mean?
100%.
Like the bad guy who like, give me your lunch money. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how I talk to everybody. Like, nobody ever took my lunch money.
Nobody took my lunch money, but they did take my cookies that I paid 25 cents for.
So
you're probably like $1.50 now to account for inflation.
That's right. Inflation. That's like $8 worth of cookies today. That's right. Just in a week. You know what I mean?
This is crazy. I mean, this is I know. Usually when we do the egg hunt at my grandmother's house, again after Easter, I was like, she puts dollar bills in it, but this year she put 5s in. I was like, Grandma knows about inflation.
That's right. That's right. Is that why you eat protecting your food? Because you don't want people to
back in school, I was like, it's not because I was afraid people were going to take my cookies. I was like, somebody would put my chocolate milk and just ruin my chicken nuggets, and they would just think it's funny. Like, oh, I'm gonna pour chocolate milk in your applesauce, or I'm gonna pour
That's a repressed.
I was talking with Brittany, like my wife, the other day. I was like, I was blown away. I was drinking chocolate milk from the local gas station. I was like, I used to drink this every day.
That's disgusting.
You did too.
No, I didn't.
That was the only free thing on the menu.
I didn't drink it.
I was like, you had to pay extra for a Dasani water bottle. I was like, my bones are strong, but I was like, I'm dehydrated as, yeah.
As the desert. You're dry as the Sahara out here.
Dry as the Sahara.
I paid for the extra water. I don't like the school chocolate milks. Sue me.
No, there's just something about that, like the paper.
The carton?
Carton.
Do you want to hear something? For the longest time, so, okay.
Do they give almond milk out in school now, or is it all still whole milk? It's whole milk?
Is whole milk?
It is whole milk.
It is whole milk.
I was like, I didn't know. I was like,
does any school have almond milk?
I don't know if we got, like,
California schools have almond milk. Hey, if you go to school here in Delaware, or even like we have some students who are from Maryland, right? Let's not discount our Maryland people, right? Cross state lines over there. You know what I mean? If over in Maryland you guys have like almond milk or like, what else? Oat milk. Do they serve oat milk for lunch?
Oat milk is disgusting.
No, it's not. You take that back. You ever had cereal with oat milk? Why is everybody in the everybody in here is nodding their head no at me right now, right? Don't.
Now I did switch from whole milk to 2% because
you like drinking water.
Dude, now I drink whole milk and I feel like it's a smoothie, like I'm chewing my milk. I was like, that's not
whole
how
milk?
It's supposed to be. Whole milk, yes.
That's what it's all about.
No, 2%.
Skim? Do you skim?
No, I don't skim.
What's the difference between 2% and skim milk?
That's a great question.
Is skim milk basically 1% milk?
No, 1% milk is 1% milk.
They make 1% milk?
How did we get here?
Then what's skim milk? We were talking about being bullied in school. Oh, for those of y'all that don't know, Pastor Parker eats with...
bullied because of your choice in milk, you know?
That's right. You did get bullied because of your choice in milk. Huh? You eat like you're guarding your food, like it's your last meal on death row that you'll ever eat.
Like I said, back to the main point, I was like, I guarded my food because people would absolutely ruin it because they thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I was like, no one ever took my lunch money, but they disrespected my lunch.
Yeah, you had to protect all the... I don't know if... Do you guys still have to protect your food today? Is that still a thing where everybody has to like protect their plate? I watched a kid get suspended one time because he took some other kid's carrots, shot them across the cafeteria, and then put them back on his plate. And when whoever was in school came over, and
buddy that got arrested because he started clapping in a
yeah,
lunchroom.
We went to school,
and the entire cafeteria started clapping.
So those of y'all that don't know, Pastor Parker and I went to school together. Shout out Lake Forest High School.
Your best choice.
Your best choice. I'm not. Look, I think they just said that because I'm not sure that's true. But
you better watch it. I was like,
there's some teachers watching this.
That's right.
They'll find me. They'll find out where I live. They're gonna come back for the next shoot of our studio and be like, "What did you say about Lake Forest?" But we went to school together, and one day we were sitting in lunch. I don't remember what block lunch
like
it was.
It was like the thunderclap, where it's just like you start out slow.
Yeah, you start out slow, right? And then you slowly speed it up. And these guys would do this. Now, they sat at one of the senior tables. Now, don't know if your cafeteria has a senior table, but it's basically just like everybody else ate at like rectangle
I wouldn't
tables.
consider this like a very influential student. It's not like he was the most popular guy in school. Like, he's just an average Joe, just clapping his hand.
He was a bit more than an average Joe. He was a character, to say the least. I'm not going to name this person.
But he was a bit unstable.
But Tyler was out there. And
cut his name out, bleep it out.
Yeah,
bleep it out,
yeah.
bleep
Fix
it
it in
out.
post. I'm leaving it in. Tyler, you're a mess. All right, you're probably great now. But no. So Tyler would. I didn't even mean to do it that time, but he would. It doesn't matter. We don't know his last name, so who cares? And I'm not gonna do it. But he would do this every day. He would do this every day. He would try and get people to clap along, and every day it didn't work. He would clap at school, right, and do that thunderclap and try and like get everybody to like join in or whatever.
Never worked.
And then it was always just their table, like 8 guys, just like laughing by themselves because they were like, "This is hilarious."
You know those kids at lunch.
And yeah, you know the ones. You know the ones, all right. And if that is you, stop it. And
and here's why.
And here's why. Yeah, here's why. All right. Careful. And so he did this one day, and the table next to him thought, "What the heck? He does this every day. Let's join in." And on this particular day, the table next to them also thought, we're going to join in too. And so like the whole side of the room starts clapping. So then by the end of, then he stands up and keeps clapping as these other tables around him. And he's getting into it. And he starts like heavy clapping, like, come on. And the whole cafeteria stands up and is now like in a standing ovation.
Oh yeah.
Like as if Michael Jordan himself came to do a commencement speech in our cafeteria. Like he's here and everybody's standing ovation, screaming, shouting, clapping. It was wild. It was a crazy moment. But then,
it was probably one of his proudest moments of his life up to that point.
Up to that point, yeah, he's done better since then, right?
Until
our student resource officer walks over and puts him in handcuffs and walks him out of the cafeteria,
and he charged him with inciting a riot.
Yeah, with inciting a riot at lunch in the lunchroom.
I wouldn't consider him a political person.
Yeah.
I was like, he was just doing a joke around. But I was like, in that moment, started a riot.
Yeah, that's his villain origin story right there. That's it. That's how he became a villain. Was he got arrested in a school lunch one day for clapping. Imagine on your police report years later, you have like a criminal record. Imagine you get out of high school, you have a criminal record.
You're applying to work at like a local daycare, and they're like, actually, we can't employ you. You can't work with children.
You're trying to work
because you incited a riot.
For a Fortune 500 company. You have all of the
Procter & Gamble just tells them, hey, man, no.
That's right. You're trying to be a CEO. Well, you can't just take that job, I guess. But you're trying to be like some CFO somewhere. You're a finance bro now.
You're a key stakeholder in Fortune 500 company.
And here you come, and you're putting in your application, and they go, hey, what's this on your criminal record? And you have to explain to them about how you clapped in high school in the cafeteria and got arrested for it. Imagine. Do you still get the job? You tell me, all right?
What's the main point of all of this?
The main point of all this is that, something about bullying, but I don't remember. You know what I mean? My point is,
there's a bunch of contributing factors.
Yeah.
Fix that.
And now that guy's depressed because he got arrested one time. And that's what I'm getting at here. And it's all because of bullying, right? He was bullied by our student resource officer. True story.
That's not true.
I think he's the judge of that one.
Rein it back in.
But no, like, yeah. So we got a kid who was arrested. Oh, you got to guard your food at lunch. But no, like, I would never say I was bullied in school, but like there were definitely times where, like I was picked on for different things. You know what I mean? Like I was also like the quiet kid. I was the church kid. You know what I mean? Like everybody knew me as the church kid. But with that also came all this peer pressure. I remember like I was sitting in class one time and some kid was like, "So you don't cuss at all?" And I was like, "No."
And you're just like, "No."
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh. To be clear, nothing was edited in post. He just actually didn't say anything. Yeah, I feel like I need to say that.
You just gotta clarify.
Yeah, I gotta clarify that one. But no, he'd be like, "Come on, say something for me right now." And I was like, "Why?" First of all, I am not gonna say something, but also, why would I just do it just cause? Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But like, there's just all kinds of pressure all the time. But especially, I feel like when people know that you're like, or identify you with like the church kid, or like understand that you have like a belief system or whatever. Like this, the second that you're like, this is what I believe, people are like, oh, I'm gonna break that from you, or like whatever, or people just pick on you for what you believe, or just try and like do a certain thing, or like be a certain way about it. And that does over time, like, peer pressure does eventually play in to where we'll compromise like what we believe or how we act or our peace or our state of mental health or whatever it is for someone else appeasal, or just to be like, man, if it'll get you to stop, sure. You know what I mean? Like, and we end up compromising on a bunch of those things. I don't know. I've been there. You ever been there?
Not even.
Nah. Oh, well, that's what I meant. Like, you find yourself in places where you said, nah, I was like, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. But like,
I was the one trying to get kids to cuss.
Yeah. Listen, we went to high school in two very different. We went to the same high school. We were two very different people. We had
two very different journeys.
We had two different high school experiences.
Let me clarify, though. I was like, if I could go back, I would change it.
But
it adds to my story. It gives me different perspectives, but I was like, I will say I do applaud Pastor Lucas and all of it. All throughout high school, all throughout middle school, he was very consistent in his faith.
That doesn't mean I was perfect. I definitely messed up, but I messed some stuff up.
But I'm saying that to say, it was like, hey, like, if you're currently walking through a lifestyle like that, where you feel like you're the kid that's like, you're trying to get kids to cuss, you're trying to get them to go out and go to parties, or you're trying to go out and get them to do stuff. It's like,
stop it.
I was like,
get some help.
I was like, I'm not
Where's
trying
that
to
Jordan video?
Shame and guilt.
Put it in there.
But I was like, and not to,
post,
I was like, to go back to like the scripture, to go back to like Elijah and that entire story of like Jezebel and in all of it, she was trying to ultimately rob Elijah of the plan and purpose that God has placed inside of his life. I was like, she tries to steer him off course. She tries to get him to take himself out. She tries to get him to lose sight of who God is and what he's called him to. And I mean, the reality of all of it, it's like, hey, if you're walking in a season like that where you feel like, hey, I'm a little off course or a little off path, like you can steer back. And I would encourage you to do so. Because I'm not saying I look back in my high school career as like regret. There are decisions that I do regret, but I was like, and not to make it like over spiritual, but I was like, I look back at all the opportunities I missed, like point my friends closer to Jesus.
Start the keys.
Start the keys. Like,
get the keys
are going to come
playing
on.
in the
Like,
background.
Holy Spirit's going to come in. But I was like, not to like over spiritualize it, but seriously, I was like, I mean, Jezebel was trying to get Elijah to lose sight of who God was and what he has called him to. And ultimately, that's what the enemy is trying to do. And anxiety and depression is one of the tools that he uses.
Yeah.
He's like, if he can get you, I mean, this is his only battleground. Like, he can't, I mean, there's things that can physically harm you, but I was like, he can't go out of his way and slap you across the face. I was like, he can influence somebody to do so.
Now that I'm quoting, all right? Now that's something
Don't misquote it.
Yeah, I'm gonna misquote
I was like,
it.
the enemy, his battleground is up here.
We are putting this on the next student's post, and we're misquoting you, and we're putting your quote
just take it
next
out
to
of
it.
all context.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, the enemy just wants to come slap you in the face.
The enemy's only battleground is right here, with a hand right next to your face.
But like, we were talking about this literally in my Freedom group. Like, if you're not a part of Freedom, I was like, when you
be a part of Freedom next time it comes around.
Next semester. But we were talking about this. I was like, the enemy, his battleground is in your mind.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not making light of physical trauma, but physical harm is way too easy for the enemy. I was like, he wants to beat you up here because if he calls you to fall, if he calls you to stumble, I was like, that's where if you're the one physically doing it, I was like, and you're making yourself mess up, that's where you get shame, that's where you get guilt, and eventually you just get stuck in this like in your room with this pit in your stomach and you have nowhere to go. Yeah. I was like, but if you can win up here, I was like, if you can address those anxious thoughts, those seasons of depression, I was like, if you take them to God, you take them to God's people, you talk about it, you find the proper healing, you not only live a fuller life with more joy, more peace, but I was like, you can also walk in the fullness of the purpose that he has for you. I was like, so all that to be said, like physical harm is way too easy for the enemy. He wants to get you up here and he does it in many different ways, but one of the biggest ones is anxiety and depression. If he can get you to sit in a pit with his pit in your stomach, to stay in your room, I was like, he will rob you of the fullness that God promises and the purpose that he's placed inside of your life.
I mean, look at Jeremiah. Like Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, not Y'all thought about Jeremiah.
Wake?
Y'all thought about Jeremiah. You knew. You're like, man, I didn't know he was depressed.
How does he know that guy?
I was like,
he's always got a smile on his face. I was like,
yeah. Shout out Jeremiah Wake.
You got Jeremiah's all over the place getting texts right now, like, hey, bro, you good? You good?
Everybody's texting their friend Jeremiah. They're like, heard you were going through it. He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Or he's just like, man,
I'm great.
Or they dump it on. They're just like, man, how'd you know? Like this and that, blah blah. And you're like, whoa. But no, like Prophet Jeremiah. He wrote Jeremiah. Right, pretty self-explanatory there, right? And then, but he also wrote Lamentations, right? Jeremiah was known as like the crying prophet. You know what I mean? Like this man was. I mean, if anybody could be diagnosed with depression in the Bible, is this man, right? He wrote the book Lamentations, and like lament is literally like to like weep and be sorrowful. You know what I mean? Like this man was going through it. Do you know what I'm saying? And but like God still used him. You know what I mean? Like God still used him. Mm-hmm. To do great things. And so it's like, even if you find yourself in seasons like that, I know for me, I've found myself in seasons or a season of where I was depressed for a long time, where like I didn't feel like getting out of bed. I didn't feel like coming to work. I didn't feel like getting after it. And Amanda could tell you, she's like, you know, had to kind of like drag me to do things and get me up and get me after it. And like, you need somebody who, if you don't have a friend in your life, get a friend in your life who's willing to like, go to your house and bang on your door and just not gonna let you sleep all day. You know what I mean? Like, cause it's,
hey bro, you good?
Yeah. But like for real, like, you know, it's so easy when you see signs of depression in someone's life where they're, you know, exactly. And not like they're just depressed all the time, but it's like they may be going through a season of depression and all the signs are presenting themselves of like different things. It's like, you may need to be the friend to go to their house and go, hey man, you're not just going to sleep all day and take the easy way out of just, I'm not getting out of bed. I'm just not going to do anything. It doesn't matter. Like, and help them live with a purpose, help them do something, help bring them out of that.
Literally one of the greatest ways, I mean, to get out of a season or get out of a spell, to get out of a wave of like depression, again, it may be biological, it may be a chemical imbalance, but I was like, finding a purpose that is bigger than yourself. Yeah. I was like, finding a reason to wake up. Of like, I mean, like you said, and I've walked through seasons too where, I mean, honestly, it's hard to get to work. It's hard to get to my desk. It's hard to, even when I'm sitting at my desk, like, I don't want to do anything. And the reason being is because I have lost my why. Yep. I was like, I've lost sight of what God has called me to. And it's like, but I know it's differently when I wake up and automatically I'm reminded of like, I mean, not the people that are relying on me, but I was like, the purpose that God has called me to. I mean, he's called me to this house. He's called me to these people. I was like, and if I take myself out, it's not just my life that's at stake. It's so many other people. And I'm not saying like people relying on me, but there's a purpose that God has placed inside of me that if I'm not living it out, I was like, if you are in a spell, if you're in a season, if you're experiencing waves of depression, I'm not saying it is a quick fix, but I was like, it is a quick way to get back in the game. Be reminded that, hey, don't sit in those spells or with that pit. Be reminded of your why and reminded of something that's a lot bigger than yourself. Because like, you wake up differently when you know that there's people and there's a purpose that is relying on you. I was like, and for you as a student, I was like, be reminded. I was like, God has called you to your friends. God has called you to your school. God has called you to your sports team. So I was like, if you feel like, hey, I don't have a reason to get out of bed, be reminded of those few, maybe you have a Jeremiah in your life that needs you. I was like, and it'll turn your attention out of everything that is weighing you down. And I was like, it'll turn your focus to lift your eyes to something bigger, to something better. I was like, the world needs you. If I could say all of it, I was like, just get your mind on something that is bigger than yourself. Be reminded of your why, your plan, and the purpose that God's placed inside of you.
Yeah. But I mean, like you said, the idea like, hey, tomorrow needs you. You know what I mean? Like there's people in your life who need you now. You know what I mean? Like, and you may be going through it, which is okay. You know what I mean? But don't let that be a reason to like, give up. You know what I mean? Like tomorrow is better with you here. If you're not dead, you're not done. You know what I mean? Like there's still a plan. There's still a purpose. There's all these things are still part of it. You know what I mean? And I know last week I talked a lot about like comparison, like the idea of comparison, the idea of the highlight reel effect, and even to like clarify on a lot of those things is like sometimes, you know, all we need is to eliminate something in our life for a season of our life. You know what I mean? It's like, again, going back to the thing, I don't think social media is the devil. You know what I mean? Like,
it's the worst.
Yeah.
I'm good.
It's like, but I'm not saying that. But if you find yourself in a season of depression and all you find yourself doing is scrolling Instagram and talking about how everybody has a better life than you and everything is, you know, everybody's life is great and my life is horrible. And it's like, yeah, dude, they were in Cabo last week. You know what I mean? Like, of course, you know what I mean? Like, but that was 3 days. That was 3 days of their life. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't see what the test they failed was. You didn't see the 40, and you're like, they always have the perfect caption. It's like, it took them 45 minutes to put that caption. They put it through Chat GPT. That's the only reason it's so good.
That thing through Grammarly.
Yeah, they put that thing through Grammarly, and AI wrote
generative
for them.
AI to make
AI
it
wrote that
sound
caption
so much
for
better.
them.
It's like they don't talk like that.
Yeah, they could never. You know them. They would never think of something.
They
that
can
clever.
never formulate a sentence like that.
You're like, you know them, and they're not that smart. That's not. That has nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? But like sometimes it's easy to look at things like that and tell ourselves things like that. But like I don't think it's bad. But I think there are times where maybe we just need to get rid of something and add something else for a season in our life and get a better perspective and all these different things. But you can beat it. You can overcome it. And we are willing to talk about it. But yeah, so I think that's all we got for this week. But hey, as we go into future weeks of future episodes, future podcasts, we want to hear from you. If there's things that are happening in your life right now that you would love for us to be talking about, like DM us on Instagram while you have Instagram. Unless you don't have Instagram right now, then don't DM us on
DMs
Instagram.
were dead.
Yeah, DMs are dead, but we're bringing them back.
Bring them back.
Yeah. Look, I said sliding in people's DMs is dead in 2024. All right, that's out in 2024. But informing us also. We'll probably try and get a link below in the description of the video that you can actually like put on a Google Doc that lets us know, hey, I would love for you guys to talk about this topic, or man, here's something that I keep getting confronted with in school because I am the church guy or the church girl in school, and these are questions that people keep asking me, and I don't know how to answer them. Or man, this is something that I'm like, people keep coming at me on a day-to-day basis with this or that thing, and I don't know how to talk about it. We would love to talk about it. Like, those are all things we want to talk about. So if there's ever a topic or something you have a question about or something you'd like us to address, let us know. Grab that Google Doc in the description. Let us know in our DMs on Instagram, because it's things we want to talk about. We want to talk about things that you guys want us to talk about that are relevant to what you have going on. That's why we want to get students on the couch in future weeks where they can talk to us about what it's like living in their shoes, the things you guys encounter, and what it's like being in your shoes. So let us know. But until then, we'll catch you all next time.
That's right.